Dr. Uche here. How are you? Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited today. Once in a while, I do review works of fiction. Today, I'm going over this one. In Every Mirror, She's Black. In Every Mirror, She's Black by Lola Akinmade Akerstrom. I read this book about 2 weeks ago. I absolutely love this book, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a story here. Before I do that though, go ahead and hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, like, share with your friends so that you'll know when I upload new videos. In addition to reviewing books, especially works of fiction, sometimes autobiographies, I do children's book read aloud. So I hope you'll play some of these once in a while for your littles. And I, most importantly, come here to give you tips and suggestions to help you write your autobiography. All right, let's dig in. So this is a really interesting story, and it's revolving around three women. One, Brittany Ray, the other, Kemi, and the third, Muna. Really different circumstances these women are in. Brittany Ray, Kemi, and Muna. Three women, three different situations, both black, all three black women. Kemi, Nigerian ancestry. Born in Nigeria, ended up in the U.S. as a student for college, I believe. A professional, an executive, working in a company, and Brittany Ray, a flight attendant. Now, Muna, rather unfortunate situation, an immigrant, a refugee fleeing war, ended up in Sweden. So I'm gonna back up here because these three women who absolutely don't know each other end up in Sweden, all under some influence or in some way influenced by a certain very powerful Swedish man, Johnny van London. So Brittany Ray, he meets on a trip, right? Brittany Ray's a flight attendant serving the first class, and Johnny van London was traveling, and that's how they met. And Kemi, they actively recruited from a company in the US to come and work for their company in Sweden under the umbrella of diversity and inclusion. Now, Muna is an immigrant, ends up in Sweden, but it just so turns out that some of the groups that are helping immigrants are actually being funded partly by John London's company. So she ends up working in his company, environmental services, sort of a housekeeping kind of job. So interesting how Brittany Ray gets in an affair with this man, actually marries this man. So this man lures her from her own relationship with somebody who actually really loved her in the US and convinces her, very dramatic, very rapid sort of love affair, literally sweeps her off her feet, kicking and screaming. It seemed like she wasn't even sure she wanted to be with him, but somehow she ended up with him. He was persistent, and she ended up with him. Now, Kemi, they recruited relentlessly, and she ended up coming to Sweden. Now, she had her own issues in the US. A lot of things weren't quite working for her. So it was a relief to be able to go some other place. She was kind of dealing with relationships that weren't working and so on and so forth. So they all end up in Sweden. And it's a very interesting story about how Brittany Ray marries this guy, has a child for him, and there's so much dislike towards her by his family, his parents especially. They never met her daughter, not for one day. Brittany Ray's parents were not happy with the marriage. Johnny van London's parents were not happy with the marriage, but she couldn't quite understand why. Something about this van London guy always seemed a bit off. And then Kemi gets recruited in this company owned by this man, yet she hardly ever sees this guy. It's clear that he is somebody born into privilege, raised in privilege. They own this huge establishment, and he's a figurehead. He's not doing most of the work. He's gallivanting all over the world, from one affair to the next, and he seems to have a thing for black women. Now, bingo. Ends up that he actually does have a fetish for somebody who looks a certain way, and that's how he ended up with Brittany Ray. And she realizes this at the very end, that he's not in love with her. He's in love with somebody who she looks like from his past. And to complicate this further, this man probably has a neurodevelopmental issue that wasn't treated. Now, I'm not trying to say that people with neurodevelopmental issues end up as weird as he ended up, because there are obviously many parts to him. But that was something I think the author wanted to raise, the issue of neurodevelopmental issues swept under the carpet, the stigma, and what can happen when things are not addressed in somebody who already has other personality problems, okay? So the neurodevelopmental issue is not the only issue here. And if I had to guess, I would say this young man probably fell somewhere on the spectrum. But in addition to that, he obviously had some serious personality issues, okay? I want to make sure I'm saying this right. I'm not saying that because he's on the spectrum is why he ended up the way he was. But I'm saying that it turned out that part of his challenge had to do with probably being on the spectrum, not being able to read people well, and so on and so forth. Muna, very, very sad situation where she lost several members of her family trying to flee conflict and war. Ended up in Sweden, lost a very dear friend, somebody she really loved, who took his own life. Ended up with a very loving Swedish woman who sadly died from cancer. And at the very end, she is realizing that everybody she ever loves, she loses. And so she kind of makes a terrible decision. So I'll let you read that. Kemi ends up in Sweden thinking that would be the best situation for her, and realize a very painful truth. After having an encounter with a certain man that was in the same company. At the very end, it's clear to us that Kemi is actually making her way back to the US. So I'm gonna let you read this to understand the rest of it, but I do think that it was an interesting book, a debut novel for the author Lola Akinmade Akerstrom, shedding light on how three different people in three different situations ended up in Sweden, obviously writing a little bit about the experience of maybe a woman of color in Sweden, maybe things she had seen, and obviously some challenges of being in a different culture for these three women and being people of color in the society. Also, as I said, she uses this book to write a little bit about neurodevelopmental challenges. So I loved it. I highly recommend it. And I'd love to know what you think about it when you read this. In Every Mirror, She is Black by Lola Akinmade Akerstrom. And I hope you join me when I review another book. This is Dr. Uche of Dr. Uche Books, coming here to give you book suggestions, review fiction, sometimes children's book read alouds, and most importantly, tips and suggestions to help you write your biography. I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.